I sold your house to your brother. My dad's voice was cold, detached. It didn't even sound like him. The words hung in the air, a heavy weight that pressed down on my chest. I stared at him, unable to speak. I felt like the floor had just been pulled from beneath me. My house, the one I grew up in, the place where my childhood memories lived, was gone. And for what? To please my brother, who had never shown any care for me or this place. My dad, the man who had promised to always have my back, just sold the only thing I had left of my mother, who passed away a few years ago. I had no warning, no conversation, no chance to even say goodbye. Just a simple, cruel statement. I sold your house to your brother. I wanted to scream, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I took a deep breath and tried to hold it together. I thought maybe it was a mistake, maybe there was some kind of misunderstanding. But looking at his face, I knew it wasn't. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't even bothered. He just didn't care. It wasn't the first time I had felt invisible in my family, but this was different. This was betrayal. This wasn't just my dad taking the easy route. This was him choosing my brother over me, and it stung worse than I ever imagined. I tried to make sense of it, tried to ask him why, but the words didn't come. His answer was simple. It's better this way. I could feel my pulse quicken, my body tense, but I stayed quiet. What was the point of arguing? I knew it wouldn't change anything. I didn't know how long I stood there, frozen in disbelief, but when I finally managed to speak, it was barely above a whisper. What am I supposed to do now? He just shrugged. Figure it out. You're an adult. I wanted to tell him how much this hurt, how much I felt like a stranger in my own family. But I didn't. Instead, I walked away, every step feeling heavier than the last. The house was gone, and I was left with nothing but the hollow ache of betrayal. I spent the next few days in a daze. My mind wouldn't stop racing. I kept replaying the moment. My dad told me he sold the house, over and over. I couldn't understand it. The house wasn't just a building to me. It was where I grew up, where my mom and I spent countless hours baking cookies in the kitchen, where I had spent my entire childhood. But now it was gone. I could still see my dad's face, so indifferent, as if it didn't matter. It felt like everything had changed in a single moment. I tried to reach out to him, but every time I called, he didn't pick up. It was like he was avoiding me. I hadn't spoken to my brother since I found out, and part of me didn't want to. What could I possibly say to him? After all, he didn't care about me or the house. He never had. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about a house. This was about everything. Growing up, I had always felt like I was second to him. My brother was always the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one who everyone adored. And here he was, taking what was mine, without a single thought. I had no choice but to move out. I couldn't stay in a place that no longer felt like home. But where would I go? I had no savings, no real plan. I felt trapped. My friends were supportive, but they had their own lives. I couldn't keep asking them for help. I wandered around for hours, unsure of what to do next. I drove past the house, not sure why I was even doing it. The moving trucks were gone, but the memories stayed. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. It wasn't worth it. As I drove down the street, I saw a small park where I used to go as a kid. It was still the same, but I wasn't. I parked the car and sat for a while, trying to clear my head. I thought about calling my brother, asking him why. But I knew he wouldn't answer, and if he did, he wouldn't care. My hands trembled as I thought about what I'd lost. The house, my father's trust, my sense of belonging. I felt like a stranger in my own life. I had always imagined that when things got tough, my family would have my back. But now I knew better. The reality hit me harder than I expected. I was on my own, and somehow, I was okay with that. I had to be. No one else was going to make it better for me. I didn't expect to hear from him, but I did. My brother called late one night, his voice distant, as if he were calling from far away. "Hannah, I think we need to talk," he said. I didn't know whether to be relieved or angry. "What about?" I asked, my voice sharp before I could stop it. He hesitated for a moment, almost like he was deciding whether he should say what was on his mind. "About the house, and everything else." I could feel my heart race, but I kept my tone calm. "You mean the house you took from me?" I said it before I could think, and his silence on the other end was enough to confirm everything I needed to know. "Hannah, it wasn't like that," he started, but I wasn't interested in his excuses. I had heard enough. "You sold my house, James. Without telling me. Without asking me. It was mine, too." There was another pause, this time longer. The guilt, or whatever it was he was feeling, hung heavy in the air. I had no choice, he finally said. Dad needed the money. You know that. I couldn't believe my ears. And what about me? Did I need the money? My voice was shaking now, but I wasn't going to let him off the hook. Dad didn't think you'd care. He thought it was better to just do it without you knowing, he said, his voice soft and defensive. Better for who? You? Dad? I asked, feeling the anger rise in my chest. Better for you, James. You always get what you want, don't you? You always get the house, the attention, everything. I didn't even wait for his response. I hung up the phone. I couldn't stand to hear any more. The betrayal was one thing, but hearing him justify it was something else entirely. I sat in the silence of my apartment, the weight of everything sinking in. My brother, my own flesh and blood, had chosen the easy route. He had sold my house, our home, and didn't even give me a chance to fight for it. I wanted to believe that things could be different, that maybe he didn't know what he was doing, but I knew better now. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about everything that had happened in our family. The years of resentment, the favoritism, the silent wars that had been brewing under the surface for as long as I could remember. And now, it was out in the open. I had no choice but to accept it. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Not this time. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. All I knew was that I couldn't just let it slide. Not when it hurt this much. I didn't sleep much that night. The anger still burned in me, but so did the hurt. I kept replaying everything in my head. I thought about how things used to be. I thought about the times when I used to look up to my brother, when we were kids, sharing secrets and laughing at our parents' expense. But that was a long time ago. As the years passed, James changed. It wasn't about the house or the money. It was about power. I had always been the quiet one, the one who stepped back, who didn't make waves. I let him take the spotlight, let him take everything. Maybe I thought that if I just stayed in the background, everything would be fine. But I was wrong. After the call, I sat in my apartment, staring at the blank walls, the silence pressing down on me. I realized I had been letting my family's toxic dynamic control my life for too long. I had always been the one to keep the peace, the one who went along with whatever they wanted. But now it was different. I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't going to let my brother steal everything from me without a fight. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I was done being the victim. I got out of my chair and walked over to the small desk by the window. I opened my laptop, trying to focus on something other than the overwhelming emotions swirling inside me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I thought about my next move. I had to act fast. The house was already sold, but that didn't mean it was over. There had to be a way to stop this. I couldn't let my dad and brother think they could get away with this. Not anymore. I pulled out the papers I had been saving from when my mom passed away, documents that outlined her wishes, things my father and brother had never paid attention to. As I looked at them, a plan started to form. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about standing up for myself, for what was right. I couldn't let them walk all over me anymore. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope. It was small, but it was there. I had been pushed down for so long, but now I was ready to fight. I didn't know how things would turn out, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me without a fight. I didn't expect to hear from him again so soon. But there he was, standing at my door the next afternoon. James. I could tell from his expression that he wasn't there to apologize. His face was hard, like he had made up his mind about everything. Hannah, we need to talk, he said, his voice colder than I remembered. I didn't invite him in. I didn't want to. But I stood there, facing him, not knowing what else to do. What now? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He sighed, as if this was something he had been carrying around for a while. I know you're upset, he said, and I get it. But you're not seeing the whole picture. I laughed, though it was bitter. The whole picture? You sold my house, James. What could possibly make that okay? He didn't flinch. It wasn't like that. Dad needed the money, and you weren't doing anything with it. You were just sitting there, waiting for someone to tell you what to do. His words stung, but they weren't as sharp as they used to be. I wasn't the same person anymore. I'm not a child anymore, James, I said, my voice firmer than it had been in years. I can take care of myself. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. I know, but you're still acting like you have all the time in the world. You think this is all about the house. It's bigger than that, Hannah. Dad, he's not the same. He's getting older. He doesn't think you can handle it. His words hit me like a ton of bricks. And you think you can? I asked, raising an eyebrow. You think you're the one who can handle everything? He didn't respond, just stared at me. It was like he was waiting for me to back down, for me to let him take control like he always did. But I wasn't backing down. Not this time. You're wrong, James, I said, stepping closer to him. I don't need anyone's permission to live my life. And I'm not going to let you or Dad make decisions for me anymore. His eyes flashed with something. Guilt, maybe, or anger, but he didn't say anything. For a long moment, we just stood there, neither of us saying a word. Finally, he spoke. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he said. I'm just asking you to understand. I shook my head. I don't need your understanding. I need you to fix this. He didn't answer, just turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the doorway. I felt the weight of the silence settle in around me. I had thought that when this moment came, I would feel victorious. But all I felt was emptiness. The house was gone, and with it, so much of my past. But I wasn't going to let that define me anymore. I wasn't going to let them control me, not anymore. As I closed the door behind me, I made a decision. I would find a way to take back what was mine. I didn't know how yet, but I would. And this time, I would do it on my terms. I woke up early the next morning, the weight of the previous day still heavy on my chest. I had no idea what I was supposed to do next. My mind kept going back to the same thing, my father's indifference, my brother's greed, and now, I had to figure out how to reclaim my life. The house was gone, but I wasn't about to let my family's actions define me any longer. I spent the next few days researching, figuring out my options. It wasn't easy. I couldn't just walk into a lawyer's office and expect them to fix everything. But the more I looked, the more I realized that I had more power than I thought. I didn't need anyone's permission to move forward. I didn't need my father's approval or my brother's understanding. I had to take matters into my own hands. The first step was to talk to someone who could help me understand what legal avenues I had. I called a lawyer, someone who specialized in property disputes, and made an appointment. The next day, I sat across from him, the weight of everything pressing on me. He listened patiently as I explained the situation, and when I was finished, he leaned back in his chair. You have options, he said. It's going to be tough, but you don't have to give up. We can file a claim. I felt a surge of hope. It wasn't over. There was still a chance to make things right. I left his office with a new sense of determination. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had control over my own life again. I was ready to fight for what was mine, to take back what was stolen from me. The next few weeks were a blur. I spent hours working with the lawyer, gathering the necessary documents, preparing for the battle ahead. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I felt like giving up. But I didn't. I couldn't. This was more than just about the house. It was about my dignity, my future. I was tired of letting others control my life, tired of feeling small in the shadow of my family's decisions. I was standing up for myself now. When the court date finally came, I was ready. I walked into that courtroom with my head held high, not knowing what the outcome would be, but knowing that I had done everything I could. My brother was there, sitting across from me with his usual smug expression. But I didn't care. He could be smug all he wanted, but I was done being his victim. The judge listened carefully to both sides, and when it was over, he made his decision. It wasn't exactly what I had hoped for, but it was a victory. The house was gone, but I had proven my point. I had taken back my dignity. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I had spent the last few weeks rebuilding my life in a way I never thought I could. The legal battle was over, but the scars were still fresh. I had taken a step back from everything, giving myself the space I needed to breathe. It wasn't easy. There were days when I felt like I was drowning in all the changes. The weight of losing the house still pressed on me, but it was no longer all-consuming. I had found a new apartment, a small but cozy place where I could start fresh. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I knew it would take time, but slowly, I was getting used to the idea of rebuilding. My brother, James, had reached out a couple of times since the court case. He hadn't apologized, but I knew he felt the weight of what had happened. He never directly said it, but I could tell. He was trying to reach out in his own way, attempting to make things right, but I wasn't ready to accept his attempts. Not yet. I wasn't sure if I ever would be. My father, too, had tried to contact me. He left me several voicemails, his voice full of guilt and regret. I hadn't listened to any of them. I didn't need his apologies. What I needed was for him to understand the damage he had done, to realize the weight of his actions. But I knew he would never get it. As the days went by, I began to focus more on myself. I started getting involved in local community groups, finding ways to distract myself from the past. I met new people, people who didn't know my family, people who didn't see me as the daughter or sister of anyone. They saw me for who I was, not who I used to be. It felt good. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was allowed to be just me. It was a small victory, but it meant everything. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let my past define my future. Slowly, I started to rebuild my trust in myself. I stopped looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next betrayal. I stopped doubting my worth. I had been through so much, and I was still standing. I knew I would be okay, and that was all that mattered. I was starting to feel like I had a handle on things again. The pain from the past was still there, but it wasn't consuming me the way it used to. I had built a life for myself that was small, but it was mine, and that was enough for now. But then, out of nowhere, things took another turn. It was a Saturday afternoon when I got the call. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me I needed to pick it up. "Hannah, it's Michael," the voice said. Michael, my father's old friend, the one who had always seemed to have my back. He had been the one who encouraged me to fight for the house in the first place. But hearing his voice now, I had a sinking feeling in my stomach. "Hannah, I need to talk to you about something," he said. "It's about your father." I froze. What could he possibly need to say about my father? I hadn't spoken to him in weeks, and to be honest, I wasn't sure I ever wanted to again. "What about him?" I asked, my voice tight. "It's not what you think," he said, his tone urgent. "There's something you need to know. Something you've been kept in the dark about." My heart raced. My mind started to spin with questions. "What could this be?" "Just tell me, Michael," I said, almost pleading. He hesitated before speaking again. "Your father, he's been trying to get the house back. Not because he regrets what he did, but because there's something more to the situation than you realize." I felt the ground beneath me shift. I couldn't make sense of what he was saying. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Michael paused for a moment before continuing. "There's more at stake here, Hannah. Your father wasn't just trying to get rid of the house for the money. There were things going on that you don't know about. It's about his finances, and about what he's been hiding from you." I felt a cold chill run through me. My father had always been distant, but I never imagined he would go this far. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Because I think you deserve to know. The truth," Michael said quietly. "And I think you're strong enough to handle it." I didn't know what to say. The truth? What truth? I had no idea what kind of truth Michael was talking about, but the way he said it, so serious, so urgent, it made me feel like the ground beneath me was crumbling. I didn't know what to do with this information. My father, the man who had betrayed me, had been hiding something else all along. And now, I had to figure out what it was. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. The life I had been trying to build, the peace I had been finding, was suddenly shattered. I didn't know where to turn next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this go. I couldn't. I had already lost so much, and now, I had to find out what else had been taken from me. I didn't sleep much that night. The phone call from Michael kept echoing in my mind, over and over. The pieces didn't fit. There was something bigger at play here, and I had no idea what it was. I had to find out. The next day, I went to the bank, hoping to gather some answers. It wasn't the first time I had dealt with the financial side of my family's life, but this time felt different. I spoke to the bank manager, asking about my father's accounts. I needed to know if he had been hiding something. She was hesitant at first, but after I explained the situation, she agreed to help me get access to some of the records. What I found shocked me. My father had been in serious debt for years. The house wasn't just sold for money. It was part of a much larger financial problem he had kept hidden from everyone. And the worst part was, it wasn't just the house. There were other assets, things I had no idea about. My father had been transferring them for months, hiding everything from my brother and me. I sat there for a while, staring at the papers in front of me. This was more than just betrayal. This was manipulation on a scale I hadn't imagined. My father, the man who had raised me, had been making decisions that would impact all of us, and none of us had known. The anger that had been simmering inside me since I first found out about the house now boiled over. How could he do this? How could he think he could keep all of this from me? I knew I had to confront him, but not yet. I wasn't ready to deal with him face to face. Instead, I focused on what I could control. I started gathering all the information I could, going through every document I could get my hands on. The more I found, the angrier I became. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about everything. My father's decisions had led to this point, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. It was time to take action. I wasn't going to sit back and let him destroy everything my mother had worked for. The trust, the bond we once had, was gone. And it wasn't just about the financial loss. It was the emotional betrayal that stung the most. I spent the next few days making plans, figuring out my next steps. I wasn't going to back down. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was done being the victim in my own story. I was going to take control. I just had to find the right way to do it. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot.